This is VOA Africa.
Hello, I'm Esther Githui-Ewart. It's Friday, March 5th. Welcome to Africa 54. Due to the global outbreak of COVID-19, Voice of America is taking every necessary precaution to safeguard its employees, so our broadcast will look different today and in the near future as we, out of an abundance of caution, reduce our staffing at Bureau headquarters here in Washington. We're working to help keep you informed about what's going on, and we appreciate you staying with us on Africa 54. Both the United States and the United Nations are calling for an immediate end to the fighting in Ethiopia's Tigray region and for access to independent investigators amid reports of ongoing atrocities against civilians. VOA senior diplomatic correspondent Cindy Sen reports.
Ethiopian federal troops deployed by Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed have been fighting forces of the region's former ruling party, the Tigray People's Liberation Front. Thousands of people have been killed in the Tigray region, where hundreds of thousands were dependent on food aid before the conflict began, according to the UN. UN Human Rights Chief Michelle Bachelet stressed the urgent need for an objective investigation on the ground in Tigray, citing distressing reports of sexual and gender-based violence, extrajudicial killings, and lootings. The new U.S. ambassador to the UN agrees.
The onus to prevent further atrocities and human suffering falls squarely on the Ethiopian government's shoulders. We urge the Ethiopian government to support an immediate end to the fighting in Tigray. And to that end, the prompt withdrawal of Eritrean forces and Amhara regional forces from Tigray are essential steps.
In a recent phone conversation with Ethiopia's Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, Secretary of State Antony Blinken reiterated U.S. commitment to providing humanitarian assistance to the vulnerable in the country. Abiy made commitments to ensure security in the region and protect civilians, according to State Department spokesperson Ned Price.
I think what we're going to look to are both the right words, but of course, even more importantly, the follow-through.
Amnesty International has concluded that Eritrean soldiers killed hundreds of civilians in Ethiopia's ancient town of Axum in November. Stopping the ongoing fighting and getting independent investigators into the area will require an international effort, experts tell VOA.
This is clearly going to take a UN Security Council type weight of diplomacy and political pressure to try to change Prime Minister Abiy's approach to both what is going on inside the country, but also to longer and badly needed reforms.
Akwe and other experts note that Ethiopia is a strategic U.S. military ally in the Horn of Africa, and in recent years has been viewed as a stable partner in a troubled region. Cindy Sain, VOA News.
Turning to West Africa, where one person died in a second day of violent protests in Senegal on Thursday as supporters of the main opposition leader, Ousmane Sonko, clashed with riot police over a rape accusation that Sonko denies. According to the government, protesters at Cheikh Anta Diop University in central Dakar lobbed rocks at police in full protective gear, who occasionally fired their guns in response during an hours-long standoff. The government later confirmed that one person had died in the clashes. The death is the first in recent protests in support of Sonko, who was detained on Wednesday over rape accusations made by an employee at a beauty salon. The authorities have called on the army to back up police who could face further unrest on Friday during a planned demonstration in support of Sonko. Sonko, a 46-year-old former tax inspector, accuses President Macky Sall's government of drumming up the rape charge to undermine his strongest rival. Ghana's Supreme Court on Thursday upheld President Nana Akufo-Addo's election victory. The runner-up, John Mahama, said he had to accept the judgment, but did not believe his challenge had been dealt with properly. Akufo-Addo was declared the winner of the December 7 vote with 51.59%, ahead of former President Mahama, who received 47.37%. Mahama alleged that votes were added to Akufo-Addo's total in some polling stations, pushing him above the 50% threshold needed to avoid a runoff. The court said his allegations were without merit. World Health Organization officials said on Friday the risk of an Ebola outbreak spreading to Guinea's neighbors was very high. Some of those countries are also not prepared for vaccination campaigns. WHO's Guinea's representative Georges Alfred Kizerebo told a virtual briefing that so far 18 cases had been identified, of whom 4 had died. To date, 1,604 people have been vaccinated against Ebola in the new outbreak there. 1 year into the COVID-19 pandemic in Kenya, thousands of families are struggling with deepening poverty and unemployment. A survey by the charity Twaweza shows 60% of Kenyan families can no longer afford 3 meals per day. Brenda Mlinya reports from Nairobi.
Nearly a year ago, Rebecca Adagala took pride in her ability to feed her grandchildren. She was able to afford 3 meals a day from the money she made at her grocery business in this informal settlement in Nairobi. But now, 1 year after COVID-19 struck Kenya, Adagala can barely afford 1 meal a day.
Sometimes we only take water for dinner and sleep. If we are lucky, maybe a family member who hasn't lost their job can buy us some maize flour. We cook, and life goes on.
The Kenyan government's efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19 with lockdowns have led to rising unemployment. More than 1.7 million people lost their jobs in the first 4 months of the pandemic. A survey by Twaweza, a non-governmental group, shows that in the last 6 months of 2020, more Kenyans were worried about where their next meal would come from.
7 out of 10 of the households say that they fear economic impact much more than health impact.
A food pantry run by a charity group in Kenya is in high demand as people without jobs cannot feed themselves. Nowhere is the need greater than in the informal settlements, says the charity director, John Gathungu.
We are not able even to go there freely to distribute the food that we used to distribute, because you found since most people are not going to work, they remained in the villages and in their houses. So when there is, they hear that there is food being distributed, there is almost some stampede.
Even though Kenya's coronavirus containment measures have hurt the economy, the government says it is determined to balance the scales by keeping the public safe, while also ensuring people are able to put food on their table.
Government has also been able to set programs to put money in the pockets of those who have lost their livelihoods by initiating a weekly stipend of 1,000 per household.
But for many like Rebecca Adagala, they have not yet received this government stipend. Adagala hopes the government finds a way to safely return life to normal so that she can resume her economic activities and feed her family with dignity. Brenda Molinya for VOA News, Nairobi.
Some states in the U.S. are loosening or lifting COVID-19 restrictions, even as health officials and President Joe Biden warn against it. The measures by these states are getting mixed reaction. VOA's Maria Madiallo has our report.
Michigan and Louisiana are among the states across America loosening COVID-19 restrictions. Both states have eased capacity limits for restaurants and other businesses and are also allowing larger indoor and outdoor gatherings.
The increased capacity limits outlined in this order will still give us the ability to protect public health as we carefully track variants and continue leading with science and data.
In Texas, Governor Greg Abbott is lifting the state's mask mandate, making it the largest state in the U.S. to end that order, which is aimed at preventing the spread of the coronavirus.
Effective next Wednesday, all businesses of any type are allowed to open 100%. That includes any type of entity in Texas. Also, I am ending the statewide mask mandate.
Shopkeepers, restaurant owners, and customers in Texas have mixed reactions.
We're so excited. I am going to require that all customers do continue to wear a mask, and if they choose not to or argue with me, then I will very politely ask them to excuse themselves.
I'm going to keep my sign up in the window and hope that everybody follows it. Am I going to kick somebody out for not wearing it? No, but I'll probably stay away from them more.
President Joe Biden has warned against lifting the mask mandate at this point.
Texas, I think it's a big mistake. Look, I hope everybody's realized by now, these masks make a difference. We are on the cusp of being able to fundamentally change the nature of this disease. And the last thing we need is the Neanderthal thinking that in the meantime, everything's fine, take off your mask, forget it. It still matters.
Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves fired back, saying in a tweet, "Mississippians don't need handlers. I just think we should trust Americans, not insult them." Meanwhile, the top health official at the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention said the nation is entering critical weeks.
The next 3 months are pivotal. I'm asking you to reach deeply to protect our nation's health and to protect your loved ones. Whether mandated or not, as individuals and as communities, we can still take the right public health action to protect ourselves and others.
She says while cases in the country are leveling off, new COVID variants are emerging, ready to hijack the country's successes as states take steps to return to normal. Mariama Diallo, VOA News.
Would like to hear what you think about Africa 54 and the stories we cover. Join the discussion on Facebook. The address is Africa 54. We're also streaming our broadcast live on Facebook. Please watch and share our show with your friends. Also, check out our headlines 24/7 on voaafrica.com. Still to come. Europe's far right get inspired by US extremists even as they use new and old grievances. We'll be right back.
We're bringing women's voices to the conversation, and more than that, we're building a community of inclusion and empowerment.
Here in Kinshasa, campaigns to raise awareness against the spread of coronavirus are common, but getting that information to people who have no access to water, electricity, or money can be a challenge.
We are here at Kalerwe Market in Uganda, Kampala, where in this whole market, women are crying out for their situations to change.
For women, it will be better for us.
I think a big thing for me is just being able to say that when these protests are happening, does it turn around into policy?
Our kids are raped every single day.
This movement got the governments to listen. It really was powerful because it showed what is possible when men and women band together and say, enough is enough.
It's not necessary anymore to climb on a car. I can be in any place to cheer with the people.
Welcome back to Africa 54. The U.S. Senate is expected to vote this weekend on a massive new round of coronavirus aid addressing the ongoing economic and health crisis caused by the pandemic. VOA's congressional correspondent Catherine Gibson has more on the impact of that aid.
A gradual return to normal life as some areas of the United States loosen COVID restrictions. From restaurants reopening to some schools and theaters. Yet, as a third approved vaccine ships around the country for the first time this week, the economic pain of almost a year of closures is still being felt. A February report showing the U.S. only added 49,000 jobs, far lower than forecast.
Cautious, careful people are telling us plain as day
that the economy is not yet ready to stand on its own, that our recovery is deeply uncertain, that the risk of doing little is far greater than doing too much.
The $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan is a key part of President Biden's domestic agenda to maintain the U.S. as a global economic force.
It seems to be about as close as he can get to a full delivery on his promises with the campaign. He built his later portion of the campaign saying we need to build back better, and he was honest in the fact that this is going to cost a lot of money to provide the relief to all the people that have been impacted financially.
But Senate Republicans argue the massive bill isn't targeted at the needs of the American people.
Democrats managed to allocate less than 9% of their massive bill to the entire health care response. And listen to this, even less than 1% of the $1.9 trillion to the vaccines that will actually finish the fight. They needed to save the other 91% of the borrowed money for a vast catalog of liberal spending.
The bill will provide $1,400 in direct payments to most Americans with lower to moderate incomes, as well as $20 billion in funding for a massive expansion of vaccinations around the country.
This country will have enough vaccine supply, I'll say it again, for every adult in America by the end of May.
One key provision will also extend $400 weekly federal unemployment benefits to jobless Americans. A popular part of the $2.2 trillion CARES Act, the largest aid package in U.S. history that lawmakers passed last year to shore up a cratering economy.
The money goes not only to personal bank accounts to help them with their individual lives, but also in big, broad strokes at different levels of government and directly to small businesses to help them get through the pandemic.
Cases of the coronavirus are at their lowest number in the U.S. since October, and some economists say the U.S. could return to pre-pandemic levels of employment by the middle of this year. Catherine Gibson, VOA News, Washington.
India's inoculation drive against COVID-19 has gotten a massive boost as it begins offering vaccines to older people. The efforts to increase vaccinations comes as a surge in cases in some places, raising new concerns in a country where infections had declined dramatically. Anjana Pasricha reports from New Delhi.
Senior citizens lined up enthusiastically as India expanded its vaccination program for COVID-19 to people above the age of 60 and those older than 45 with medical conditions. It's a dramatic change in a program marred by vaccine hesitancy in recent weeks when it covered healthcare and frontline workers.
I haven't gone out for a year, and I feel safer to be able to move around a bit and without the fear of the virus.
Health authorities have underlined the need for inoculations as cases rise after a steady decline since September.
This marginal increase in certain states is a matter of concern. We cannot take it lightly at all.
Prime Minister Narendra Modi was among the first to get the shot this week. In a tweet, he urged people to do the same. He took a domestically developed vaccine that some had been reluctant to take because final efficacy results are not yet available. Covaxin is one of the 2 vaccines being administered in India. However, recent interim data showing that it is more than 80% effective could encourage more people to take the vaccine.
It is vital that we don't let this gain that India has made slip away and go Europe way, where after initial victory, they are now facing a second lockdown.
The hope is that if India can inoculate enough people in the coming months, it could break the chain of transmission in a country where millions have already been exposed to the virus. It is called herd immunity.
We have learned from various community data that nearly 50% of the people in different states are already having antibodies to COVID. And if we add this segment to that, we might be hitting that 70% magic figure of herd immunity, which actually may reach us to the tipping point beyond which the COVID numbers may start coming down automatically.
Some have questions about the vaccines. Weary of the pandemic, though, most are ready for the shots.
Even if it is good only for a certain period of time, even then I feel we should go for it. I certainly will.
Since it has to be done, I've taken it. But I don't know if I'm fully convinced that this is the best shot to take.
India's two advantages, a massive reduction in infections and ample supply of shots in the world's largest vaccine producer, have raised hopes of building on gains made so far in a country that has counted over 11 million cases. Anjana Pasricha for VOA News, New Delhi.
Women's rights activists in Kenya have welcomed U.S. President Joe Biden's order revoking the ban blocking U.S. funding to women's health organizations that provide abortion or abortion-related services. Critics say the so-called gag rule left women uninformed about safe options to end a pregnancy. Mohammed Yusuf reports from Nairobi.
Najma Wangoi lost her sister in 2018 after she bought medicine from a drugstore to induce an abortion. Wangoi says her sister didn't know there was a better way to undergo an abortion.
She didn't know because she bought those medicines for 3,500 shillings. If she knew there was a place to do a safe abortion, she would still be alive. She should have explained her situation to the hospital, and she would have been treated.
Under the global gag rule originally enacted by President Ronald Reagan and reinstituted by President Donald Trump, it became difficult for millions of women to seek abortion services at health centers receiving U.S. funds. The gag rule blocked U.S. government funding for these organizations if they provided abortion services, counseling or referrals. The rule effectively shut down health clinics as well as community sensitization programs about sexual and reproductive health. Health expert Boniface Ushie says while the ban has now been lifted by President Joe Biden, it will not be enough to undo the effects it had on women's health in Africa.
Lifting it is great, but it's going to take a while for the impact of the global gag rule as instituted by Trump to begin to live. So it's going to require a lot of funding. It's going to require a lot of programs to undo what has been done over the past 4 years.
Rose Akoth is lucky to be alive after taking tablets to abort a baby in 2019. After 3 days of pain, the fetus emerged, but the placenta got stuck in her womb, requiring urgent medical attention.
I have a health problem now since I did the abortion because it didn't come out well. These days, my menstruation goes for a month, and there's nothing I'm using like family planning. My menstrual period goes on non-stop.
Akoth, Wangoi and others hope that with the gag rule lifted, more women can be saved from abortion-related deaths and health crisis. Mohammed Yusuf for VOA News, Nairobi.
Europe's far right has suffered some setbacks recently. Germany's top opposition party is under surveillance for extremism, and France shut down a right-wing youth group. Experts say these groups are using old and new grievances and are inspired by the U.S. counterparts. For VOA, Lisa Bryant reports from Paris.
French youth group Génération Identitaire, or Generation Identity, has earned brand recognition in recent years for its flamboyant campaigns. The group's message is clear: immigrants aren't welcome in France.
We are just defending the French people and the European people that are crawling under successive waves of immigration, massive immigration.
Piano says the group uses peaceful means to make its point. France's central government disagrees. This week, it dissolved Génération Identitaire, accusing it of hate speech, behaving like a private militia, and having links to ultra-right groups with racist, white supremacist agendas. Experts say Génération Identitaire is not a terrorist or armed militia group, but activists say it's still a threat.
What worries us more is their ideological work, inciting racist and xenophobic behavior among the population.
Germany's far-right Alternative for Germany, or AfD party, is also feeling the heat. The country's domestic intelligence agency has placed it under surveillance for reported ties to right-wing extremists and posing a threat to democracy. Europe's far right has had mixed success in recent months, but it's gotten new ammunition, including public backlash over coronavirus measures, which worries mainstream governments.
They think that the extreme right is likely to benefit from this huge pandemic, not only because of the bad management of the issue, but because the pandemic raises fears among the people, fears that this virus was brought to our shores through globalization.
Former President Trump and the January siege on the U.S. Capitol have also rallied right-wing support here in Europe.
We do like Trump. We share his fight against, for example, illegal immigration, but we are nor pro-Trump or pro-Putin. We have our own agenda. We are just pro-Europeans, you know.
Many people on the French extreme right, within the most extreme movements, especially the neo-Nazi scene, looked at what happened on Capitol Hill on January the 6th with, I would say, envy, because they say, wow, those people are trying to overthrow the government and they have some success at it. Of course, they would like to be able to do the same, but they do not have the strength, they do not have the connections.
But unlike the U.S., carrying firearms here is out of the question. And Camus says Europe's most extremist groups earn only marginal public support. Tellingly, France's top opposition party, the far-right National Rally, has now distanced itself from movements like Génération Identitaire, although it criticized its dissolution. National Rally leader Marine Le Pen is eyeing next year's elections. Experts believe she needs to cast her party as more mainstream if she's going to win. Lisa Bryant for VOA News, Paris.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to watch Africa 54 on our website at voaafrica.com. From all of us here in Washington, have a great weekend.